Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second track session for day three of the annual Information Security Summit. We truly hope that you had fruitful first 2 days of the summit. This particular track is a really critical one, wherein we are discussing the theme of modernization of apps and how we are going to think through on the security aspects for the modernization process. Right, it's my both pleasure as well as privilege to honor to welcome those preeminent distinguished experts that we have with us who have graciously agreed to join us for this important discussion. Let me start by inviting Mr. Srihari Kotni, Chief Information Security Officer for Reliance Payment Solutions. Can we have Mr. Srihari on stage? Welcome to the stage, Mr. Srihari.
Thank you, Aditya.
Next, may I invite Mr. Joe Robertson. Joe is EMEA CISO and Senior Evangelist for Fortinet. Hi, Joe. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Next, can we have Mr. Sriram Krishnan? Sriram is Director for Information Security for Freshworks. Hi, Sriram. Welcome to the stage.
Hello there.
Next, can we have Mr. Vaishno Chaitanya? Vaishno is Security Researcher and Consultant for Ramgobin Technologies. Vaishno, welcome. Next, we have a very
Thank
senior
you,
speaker
Aditya.
from government, Miss Ratna Bogi Ghorai Denda. Ma'am is Deputy Director General, Scientist G for National Informatics Center, NIC. Can we have ma'am on stage, please? Okay, meanwhile, the team tries to get Ratna ma'am on the stage. Let me invite the session chair and moderator. Meanwhile, Mr. Anand Pandey, Chief Information Security Officer for GSTN. Anand sir, welcome. So we'll try to get Ratna ma'am on the stage as soon as possible. Anand sir, over to you. Meanwhile, I'll request the Zadal team to kindly take me backstage.
Yeah, thanks, Aditya. Welcome all. Hope you all are safe and exercising all precautions in this pandemic situation. With this, the topic of today's discussion is application modernization, thinking through the security. So, friends, the business and threat landscape that we are witnessing today is, of course, it is dissimilar to the one which we were comfortable seeing few years back, and the trend is not slowing; it is continuously changing. Maybe with the arrival of the latest technologies, borderless IT footprint in cloud, mobile, remote working, it has driven enterprises to upgrade their business applications from maybe monolithic to microservice-based containerized environments. And with this new normal of digital transformation, the threat landscape has increased multifold. The trend is increasing towards engineering the applications so as to optimize the IT and security efforts, fueling innovation, becoming more and more agile and free of disruptions. And say actually, I would say that the COVID has acted as a catalyst towards this digital transformation. It is continuing to do so. So in the today's discussion, at least I'll try to learn from the eminent panel uh, about what exactly is the application modernization, what's its need, what are different use cases, what if at all any frameworks or best practices are available to achieve it seamlessly. Role of DevOps or DevSecOps to bringing about agility to ensure the shift left phenomenon. Uh, so I would just now take a pause here and request panelists to introduce themselves, just to have a brief introduction with all. So let's start from say Joe.
Certainly. I'm Joe Robertson. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Fortinet. Fortinet is a provider of security solutions, hardware, software, and services. And my function is to deal with executives like yourselves and like most of the people on this that are watching this panel, talking about the issues, management issues of security, networking, and how that interacts with the whole IT environment.
So let's move to Ratnaboli, madam.
A very good afternoon. I am from NIC, that is National Informatics Center, which is the government's IT services providing body. I particularly specialize in application security, and I also am the CISO for NIC.
Thanks, madam. Thanks, Joe. So now, Shrihari, may I request you to?
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I'm Shrihari, working as Chief Information Security Officer for Reliance Payment Solutions Limited. Many people may not have it, but if I say Geo Money, people recognize it. And so typically it offers the POS, the merchant acquiring, payment gateway, wallet, and billing, POS. All types of, everything actually, every thing related to the payments is actually offered by my companies. So the financial services are like a sum of all InfoSec problems, I must say. So I take care of, so I manage the risk and I ensure that business services are actually secure and uninterrupted. Right.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, Shrihari. Thanks, Shrihari. Shriram.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thanks a lot for having me as a part of this panel discussion. So I'm Sriram Krishnan. I'm the Director of Information Security at Freshworks. My role is to lead the security engineering and the security operations team, building solutions and ensuring that we protect, detect, and monitor our customer environment, our employee internal IT environment. I have over close to 16 years of experience in the field of information security, working in technology, consulting, and banking domain. I'm really looking forward for this discussion.
Thanks, Shriram. Now, Vaishnav.
Thank you for having me. I'm Vaishnav Chaitanya, security researcher and consultant. I can be often found about talking about web security, data security, and performance online. I currently help many organizations to improve their security via Ramgobin Technologies. Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks, Vaishnav. With this, we'll start our discussion and try to understand the application modernization. So I'll start with Ratnavali Madam. Madam, will you please put some light on the application modernization process and its key triggers?
I think one of the primary reasons for moving into application modernization are today's business needs and the way the digital transformation has been happening. Over the past few years, and specifically during the last 1.5 years, we've really seen a great boom of more citizen-centric applications which need to deliver functionalities to the citizen. And that is the reason why the legacy applications which are hard to maintain or hard to deliver quickly have to be now or are now being focused more towards app modernization. So when you come to the key triggers, I would broadly scope out three major triggers. One being, of course, the cost benefits of moving into app modernization, because maintaining the codes of a monolithic legacy application is extremely expensive, considering both the kind of resources that are available to do so and the way it can be managed, because it's a huge amount of code which has to be looked into at one go and rectified for whatever or upgraded to whatever functionality is required. This obviously can be achieved by the methods that are available today, which is moving more towards decentralized smaller services like the microservices. This gives rise to a lot of implications, such as or the implications which are required today. Today's applications require to be more scalable, they require to be more agile, and they require to be more resilient, which is what is achievable through the process of the code modernization that can happen. So we move the technology. Earlier, we think of on-prem applications on a system, whereas now you have a whole gamut of cloud technologies available, starting from virtualization to containers, which sort of help us leverage these to bring about the kind of applications that one requires. They are easy to handle, and the added advantage is that because the platforms and infrastructure is maintained by a specialized organization, a specialized body, which is looking into the virtualization or the cloud deliverables, a lot of the effort put in by the people who would actually write the code and maintain the code would be taken over. So it becomes a sort of shared responsibility. So, and a shared indulgence of the actual, requirements that you need to deliver such agile applications. So it is you actually build and then the development and the operations together, so that a quick service delivery can be done without much effort and in a decentralized manner. So the developer also has a lot of, I would say, a lot of confidence in being able to do the particular portion that the developer is supposed to do, and the operations people can take care of the quick uh, testing and operations for that. So this usually would be the outcome of building a what we today call the DevOps platform, or the the CI/CD pipeline kind of an interface. Going ahead, the third factor that I would think, and which probably is one of the most important factors, is the requirement of security, or the security concerns that exist. The security concerns have been there, are there, and will be there, but taking into account the necessary security incorporations in the applications that we deliver becomes much more, much easier to handle and much more manageable with the kind of modernization techniques that we have. So moving ahead from DevOps, we come on to then DevSecOps, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot in this panel session. And DevSecOps gives us the benefit of building security throughout the entire development life cycle, the entire software development life cycle, and what we call as a shift left, because it starts from the initial stages of the design and testing at each stage, whether it is static or dynamic analysis and the final deliverable. So what you get are these little services which are security tested and ensured of security. So our assurance that the security is inbuilt within the applications becomes very, very inherent. Of course, the process of modernization, or how much app modernization an organization takes up, depends on many, many decision-making factors. So whether you actually, do what is called a refactorizing, or you just pull up an application and shift it to a cloud platform, or you actually do a rethinking of the entire application and redesigning, and is a call depending on what are the kind of deliverables, what are the kind of cost implications, what are the kind of availability of resources that one has. So these factors would bring in the decision to do the app modernization in the right way, or in the way that the CISO of the organization or the other decision makers would have to probably take care of.
Thanks. Thanks, Ratnavali madam. So with this, I'll move to Mr. Srihari. Just to put some light on, while adopting the application modernization, what kind of due diligence is required to make this journey more effective or seamless, and derive the business benefits, continuity of operations, etc.
Right. So, from the infosec perspective, right? So, app modernization is first thought of by the technology and business teams, because, as Ratna Madam said, actually the business is the customer experience is the center of or the motive for the app modernization, to make them more agile and more scalable, and a better user experience, and to take the advantage of today's diversified ecosystem across the world, right? So, but as an information security, like, you hear some great things, but actually, from the technology teams, right? For example, they'll say that everything will be same, but only this particular part is going to change, right? or the application will remain same. What we are changing is only the database. From SQL, we are moving to the non-SQL, right? Right. So typically, are you hear that the small part is actually outsourced because we don't want to have the inbuilt in-house capability because it provides kind of AI and ML model. So only this part is actually we are moving to the outside as part of this app modernization, right? So this is like a kind of everything looks but as an information security person you have to trust everything but you have to verify, right? So some of the things you have to look at is actually that there are many things. Actually, there's nothing to start. First thing is you have to understand what is the how the data ownership is actually changing, right? In the fundamentally as an infosec person, right? So is there a data duplication you are expecting, or is it data is moving here and there? For example, you are actually taking use of some kind of outside AI and ML platforms, so the data is moving out. So there is a change in the data ownership, and there is an impact to the data ownership, right? The second thing is today we have a great example, Log4j, right? I mean, it's a bad example, but the lower version is actually not vulnerable, but the current version is vulnerable, right? So every change of whether the whole application, whether it's backend, it introduces the new vulnerabilities, right? Or the application move forward, but your middleware actually don't want to move, right? So what is that actually? It's introducing the vulnerability, but sometimes the CISO also won't be knowing what are the vulnerabilities getting introduced, because sometimes the advancements are too fast, are too new, right? Something like I want to use. Yesterday, someone is asking me that I have to take a backup, like a snapshot kind of thing. Shall I use some kind of outside, blob or actually S3 buckets? I said nothing doing. Use the NAS drive we have, right? To mount it, and you just take an NFS drive and move it. They were actually a bit shocked. Oh, is it possible? Yes, I said that we have 100 terabytes data available. Take it, right? So, that architecture actually, increases the exposure level also, right? We have actually a major breach some 2 years back. It is because of the unsecure S3 packets, right? So what it means is actually that app moderation may lead to the new exposures that the CISO is not aware of, right? And the other one is actually that what is the implications to the regulatory and compliance requirements. You do the app modernization, probably you leave the credit card numbers exposed, or the new application doesn't handle the Aadhaar numbers properly, or it doesn't handle the SPAPA data, or it will share the SPAPA data some outside entities, right? So we have to look at actually what is the implications to the legal and regulatory and the various standards. And another thing that you have to do is it changing my visibility to the overall data from end to end, right? Is there anything actually going hidden, right, which I'm not aware of, right? So in case it is adding some kind of invisibilities, then you have to explore more that how do I actually discover that unknown thing. So one of the primary challenge for any CISO is knowing the unknown things as early as possible, right? So this is the few of the things which I think of, right? So things to consider are the due diligence that CISO has to apply whenever this app modernization is actually coming to the table. Right.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Srihari. So with this, Joe, with your vast experience in the security, say, security product, as a security product company professional and as well as a security professional, you have both the aspects or experiences with you. So what are the key tools and technologies involved with app modernization? How that is changing the overall the scenario? Can you help us understand?
Sure. Well, when we talk about modernization of applications, we're largely, as we've been saying, talking about cloud-based technologies like containers, microservices, and automation tools too, like Terraform, Ansible, etc. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the applications are always going to reside in the cloud. You can virtualize or you can use Kubernetes in your data center too. For me, the key is less about which particular tool you use and where it's going to be, and it's more about how you go about the development process itself. Agile programming techniques and DevOps, which have already been referred to, they accelerate development tremendously. And these methodologies don't merely change how the software teams work, however. It's not just the development teams that are impacted. They've got huge impacts on IT, on networking, and on security management as well. Now, this is because the new modernized applications change the way that traffic flows in the IT environment. Let me give you a couple of examples. Applications themselves are no longer monolithic. We've been talking about that. The code is streamlined and it's full of APIs and remote calls to microservices that may be located almost anywhere. That means not only traffic from the user to the application, which was traditional, but traffic from the application to other applications and services, which may be external or in a cloud somewhere. Another case that we could talk about is the entire software development cycle. Applications are developed in modules, and going from development to test to production and back again across perhaps many iterations may involve moving from a local data center to a cloud and between clouds, often from different providers with different tools and different security protections. All of this leads to issues of networking traffic, routing, availability, latency, etc. Now, for the security teams, the issues, they're just as great. In fact, they might even be greater than for the networking teams, because all of these application instances need to be protected because they're obviously very attractive targets for attackers. Now, developers also need to be sensitized to cybersecurity when they're doing their programming. And this is an area that, as we all know, can be very specialized, and most developers they're not highly trained security experts. They need to be made aware of things like how in most clouds, the providers have a default that the database is open to the internet, and so the developer needs to actively change the default, etc. Okay. In addition, when they're developing code, they may run in different clouds. Creating a common security posture across those clouds is really difficult because each provider has different tools, they've got different syntax, different possibilities. And not only that, each of these traffic flows, whether they're north-south or east-west, they need protection against intrusion or even API hijacking. Attackers are looking for the fault lines in our defenses, and modern applications with their multiple modules, they're an expanded attack surface for these attackers to probe. Now, the bottom line to me is that for security and networking teams, it's that you have to be involved with your development teams from the very start of the process. This is what we've been saying, the shift left, although I think DevSecOps is actually a more precise way to talk about it, because you want to be building security by design into the applications so that you as a networking team, security team, IT team, you don't get bitten in the bum at the end of the process because there are glaring security holes. So, I hope that sort of covers a wide range of what you've been looking for, Mr. Anand.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thank you. So, Sriram, you are working at, say, Freshworks. How SaaS enables shift left or secure design, and how DevSecOps or change management plays a critical role? Taking cue from what Joe has mentioned, that the developers they also need to train on the security, and there are various there are possibilities while coding which can lead to the gaps. So over to you, Sriram.
Okay. See, while the topic that we have sounds more tech savvy and technical in nature, we should all realize that it is a business driven technology and not a technology driven business. I'd like to echo the points said by Ratna ma'am and Srihari in terms of customer experience. Today's business being more customer centric in nature. Now, there are two very important things to that that one has to realize. One is the expectation over turnaround time, a quick turnaround time in terms of the features that are being built by these businesses, let it be B2B or B2C. The second aspect is users wanting to access the application and the data anywhere through any device. These two predominantly drives the business. Let it be B2B, let it be B2C. Now, if you have to link it back, I'd like to give always an analogy of F1. A pit stop is something that is very crucial for an F1 driver. You need precision, you need speed, and you need the right tool sets. Now, security over the period of time has always been playing a catch-up to development and to engineering. And there's a very crucial period that one has to realize that we would have to spin in the same pace as engineering and technology. And we can't really have a very laid-back approach. So we need to first shun our conventional way of doing security, where generally it's more parallel to our organization. It has to be more inclusive in nature. Now that brings us to the concept of DevOps and DevSecOps. In order to cater to these businesses, as Joe indicated, right, the development teams, product teams follow agile methodology. As the name implies, business has to be agile and the features have to be delivered at a pace that has been expected by the customers. Now, security should not be seen as detrimental or an overhead in this process. So what we should be doing, we talk about security design, we talk about DevSecOps, so on and so forth, but we often have to realize where these requirements are stemming from and what are some of the hurdles that we have. As far as the DevSecOps is concerned, especially in a SaaS-based organization, we've talked about business, we've talked about speed, we've talked about development. Now coming to security, there are three important pillars that has to be taken into consideration: solutioning, training, measurement. All these three pillars have to be tempered with data. As far as solutioning is concerned, it's not about buying few tools and just trying to integrate things into your environment. It's much more complicated than that. We always deal with zero-sum game, and we can't deal with that, deal with the same approach in DevSecOps. We talk about OAS top 10. I encourage organizations to have their own top 5, top 3, which can have a significant impact to their business. They can come with that top 3 or top 5 in understanding what is their business, the threat to the business, and also looking at some of the vulnerabilities that have been discovered in their application over the past 2 to 3 years. This should also be a clear indicator for the developers to watch out what they would want to do or where they may miss things. The second point is it also enables the developer to build a standardized solution rather than constantly doing mitigations. So as far as solutioning is concerned, it's not about buying and integrating tools. It's about ensuring that it is actually tailored to the environment and suitable to ensure that DevSecOps or security integrated into the DevOps becomes an enabler. Second point is training. As Joe indicated, there's a considerable amount of training that has to be done and a culture that has to be created. So the culture comes through behavior and awareness. So these are all the two pillars. Again, one has to work. Sometimes we know that when there is a signal and when there is green, we have to go, orange, we have to be ready, and red, we have to stand. But more often than not, sometimes people jump. it is not because of lack of awareness, it's more because of behavior. So I wouldn't really say it's just about developers not understanding security, but I would also reiterate the fact that it has to create more of a behavioral change, which can, so when you do the trainings, you do the technical trainings, but you also make them understand in terms of how the code that they're writing is going to have a significant impact to the business if it is insecure in nature. And last but not the least is the measurement, which is very key, right? So we have a good solution in place. We're training people. Is it improving? What are we improving on? What is the code density ratio? Are the trainings that are being delivered are actually creating an impact in the solution? These are some of the key measurements and metrics that would also be very helpful to be presented to executive management and sometimes even at the board level, so that we're very consciously deciding on, say, budgets, consciously deciding on the adoption of tool sets, and also prioritization whenever there is a log of heads between the feature that has to be delivered vis-a-vis what's the security posted to the feature. So to me, to sum up, to my response to your question is, be aware of the business that we are in. Build solutions that are more tailored to the business and to the technology. Invest a lot in training and behavioral change. And last but not the least, ensure that you have a proper metrics and measurement going to really see where you are.
Thanks, Shriram. Thanks for touching very crucial and key areas during the application modernization. So I'll come to Vaishnav now to help us or provide us some information of API security in application modernization, because as Joe also said that the application modernization can be on-prem or in cloud, does not necessarily require to be in cloud, but yes, with the microservices and the architectures, the APIs are very widely used. So will you please throw some information on API security? Over to you.
Yes, thank you. So when we talk about application modernization, we generally looking into microservice architectures. So like Anand said in the beginning, for decades, monolithic applications were the order of the day, and an application contains a set of several different services in order to deliver the business functionality. So a common approach of a modernizing an application is to use APIs. So what that means is breaking down the system into multiple parts, and they typically live in multiple containers, Docker containers. So modernizing applications involve many concepts that are very high in technology, I mean, in terms of knowledge, and not always well understood by the developers. And because of that, they do not implement proper security, let's say security settings or default settings.
Just hang on. Vaishnav, your voice is breaking a lot.
Breaking,
It's
yeah.
slow.
Just
Yeah.
is it audible now?
Yes, it's audible. Yeah.
It's still
Any better?
Yeah, this is better now.
This is better.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to start from the beginning. So like Anand said, so for the decades, monolithic applications for the order of the day, and an application which contained a set of different services were created to deliver the business functionality. So typically those applications live in containers. In order to speak to each other, they usually use APIs. So since a concept of APIs and securing them is not well, it's a knowledge which only revolves in the security teams, the developers and the architects don't really get them, and they do not apply the like a proper application architecture around the security architecture. So in order to give out a message to the architects and the developers around a containerized security, I would like them to take a step back and think about API security. So like where to start and how can they start thinking about securing their APIs, because we could go all day around discussing about static code analysis and automating some of that into our DevSecOps portion. We need to think about what changed recently. So that made API security bridges almost everyday news headlines.
Vaishnav, still
So
your voice is breaking.
okay, just a second. I think. Uh,
Vaishna, are you speaking? Because we can't
yes.
hear. Yes, now yes. Okay.
Is it better? Okay. Yeah, sorry about the minor technical difficulties. So I was saying, so the usage of APIs are not new. So it's been there like around 10 years ago too. So APIs were routinely used in internal system to system communication, but they were not really exposed to the public. We can all agree that exposing APIs to the public does a great developer friendly, and also they help customers and the clients a lot in order to integrate our systems into their existing systems. So at the same time, a new risk emerges because attackers sees that as an opportunity, and that creates a security risk for the APIs. So threat actors use the concept of APIs in order to exploit them, and they make money out of it by breaching the data. So it's time for the architects and developers to need to know the value of API contracts as a means towards a positive security model. One of which is expected behavior is clearly defined, and opposite of negative security model where bad behavior is inferred. Best practices to stop breaches through API security are like you can implement you can do the dynamic and static testing around the code, implement API gateways properly, and maintain your web application firewalls, just to name a few. But if you talk about some of the focus points, which of what do the security developers, what do the security teams commonly miss regarding to securing their APIs are they first prioritize the security of APIs. So APIs shouldn't be an afterthought or considered someone else's problem, right? So organizations have a lot to do with unsecured APIs. As we recently, not just recently, we know about Cambridge Analytica, the Facebook. So they use APIs of the Facebook to extract all the data. And inventory management of APIs. So whether an organization has dozens or hundreds of publicly available APIs, it must first be aware of them in order to secure and manage them. Surprisingly, many don't do that. Security teams can conduct parameter scans to discover and inventory the APIs, and then work with the DevSecOps team to manage them, and use a stronger authentication and authorization solutions. So a poor and non-existing authorization solutions are the major issues when it comes to publicly available APIs. When it's feasible, they must use a proper solid authorization mechanisms, just like OAuth 2.0 or OpenID Connect, just to name a few. Practice the principle of least privileges. We have been implementing this foundational security principle across our users, processes, programs, and security devices, and other commonly bring your own devices. So it should not be an afterthought here again. It should be applied equally to the APIs as well. Encrypt the traffic using TLS. It's been surprising to see many of the organizations, since their APIs were used to be an internal API, they were not being encrypted properly. So it would be better if they will be using an TLS encryption instead of a simple non-encrypted APIs. And remove the information that is not meant to be shared. So because APIs are essentially a developer tool, they can be often contain keys, passwords, and other information as well. So which can be made publicly available and which is bad for the organization. So an organization should incorporate scanning tools into their DevSecOps process, and they should prevent an accidental exposure of the security information. And always validate your inputs. So developers should never allow an input from an API through an endpoint without validating it first. And rate limiting, this is not a this is not a simple problem to face, but rate limit can basically save your organization from DDoSing, like a DOS attack. So setting up a simple rate limit of, like, for example, 1,000 requests per second can minimize the effects of a DDoS attack on your application. And to complement my previous points, I would like them to identify and fix vulnerabilities in every stage, in every build, and reduce the reliance on manual testing by leveraging multiple discovery methods like HAR files, open APIs, and postman collections, just to name a few.
Okay. Thanks, Chaitanya. So we'll again come back to Ratnabali, madam, quickly to help us on understanding how the InfoSec teams can prepare themselves to handle the various challenges which are so far discussed by the other panelists in terms of, say, while performing the due diligence or the other aspects.
Okay, thank you. I think a lot of it has already been touched upon by Joe and Sriram, because it's no more an isolated InfoSec team. Security becomes the concern of the developer, the operations, and the security personnel, of course. And because we are talking about a lot of new technology, or imbibing that technology with the availability, having the technology is not the end of it all. So one of the key requirements that the InfoSec team would require to do is look into the upskilling of people, or the training that was mentioned earlier, also in the right ways. That is a big necessity. And particularly for security, because it goes in tandem with the development. Earlier, you'd get a piece of code which would be looked into by the security testers and pointed out about what are the issues in the code. But here, because we are talking about agile development and agile delivery and using the DevSecOps platforms, it becomes necessary that the developer also imbibes the security tools and techniques into their development methodology. So the entire process becomes a continuous process. And to do so, it is necessary that each of these individuals, the resources, are trained and upskilled in the right manner. The other fact, which I think Joe touched upon, was the fact that we have a lot of, north-south as well as east-west traffic. There is a lot of dependency, not only with on services within your organization. You're actually one has moved beyond the organization, so it's your dependency on third-party factors, and a lot of development being done through open sources, third-party components which are imbibed into your code or used upon into the code, the APIs that was mentioned by Vaishno. These are not directly under the particular organization's control. So one has to look into the methodologies by which we can sort of be assured of the security, that or security of the components that we are using for the delivery of our application. So that's a different requirement where probably the compliances would come into consideration. And I think this is one of the very big challenges, because especially when you talk about open source, it is not only the code writing, but the underlying infrastructure, which also can lead to the vulnerabilities. There was a mention of the logjam vulnerability just now. So there are various requirements that have to be looked into and probably dealt with and be concerned about through different parameter controls. And since the need of the hour is to move into more of automation and not rely on manual resources, as it is, I think this industry is short of manpower so far as developers concerned, and I'm sure the security personnel are. There's always an equal number of demand for the security personnel. So the requirement is to move more towards automation, which is one of the key factors of app modernization. But the moment you talk about automation, it again concerns about how much is the automation, or where exactly, where are the inputs for the automation to be taken, and how exactly to look into the automation in a goal oriented fashion. I think these are the key requirements. And another major point I think I would talk about is that since the delivery of an application is now dependent on various cloud parameters, the understanding of the deliverables, it's to say that let's say the development and the admins, the database administrators, they all sort of work together to bring about the delivery of an application. So that kind of a conglomerated association is what is also to be thought about, not only by the CISO, but by the individuals who are a part of this team. I think that's my take on what are the challenges and how to deliver.
Yeah, thanks, Ratnaguri madam. So, friends, so far we have seen that through the discussion we have touched on many areas. Like the need of app modernization, the various triggers, then what kind of technology considerations are there. Then we discussed about the DevSecOps and its role. Also, I think Sriram touched on the point that it's not the technology only. App modernization is not technology specific. But it's a business oriented also. And then we have seen the need of training across the board, right from the top stakeholders to the developers. I think Chaitanya also discussed about API security, and then Sriram also helped us understanding various aspects in the API. So, with this, I have a quick last question. We still have 1 minute. On the perspective on the importance of app modernization during this pandemic situation. Just a quick comments from the panelists.
Well, I could jump in, and I think that the thing that's important to keep in mind is that the pandemic is driving more cloud activation, but also there's a parallel move towards working from anywhere, working from home and anywhere else. And because of that, there's a much broader attack surface. We have to protect ourselves from the bad guys, and there's security implications to all of these things. It's really going to be important to put in place tools that can provide you with an integrated mesh architecture for security, where the devices talk to each other and coordinate against threats, because you can't put everything into the application itself, because we have to protect ourselves from this expanded post-pandemic attack surface. That's my real bottom line on it.
So thanks. I think we already have exceeded the scheduled time by a few seconds, but it's okay. But I would really like to thank all the panelists for sharing their various perspectives and sharing information with us. I thanks DSCI for giving us the opportunity to be part of it, and also to the participants for patiently hearing us out. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.